Welcome to the Featured Anime Podcast. I'm your host, Jack.
And I'm Rick.
And today we're talking about not one, but two seasons of Blockade Battlefront. And for season 2, it's actually Blockade Battlefront and beyond because it's beyond our comprehension.
Unfortunately.
Indeed. So the producers for it were, a couple of them were TOHO Animation, was really the one that really stood out to me, with the Studio of Bones. Genres were action, comedy, fantasy, shonen, superpower, supernatural, and vampire.
Yeah, vampire was listed heavily here.
Mm-hmm. Both seasons were 12 episode. Season 1 took place from April 2015 to October 2015, with Season 2 airing in October 2017 all the way through December of 2017.
And honestly, I watched the first season like as it was coming out, and the second season just lost me. And after rewatching it, I understood why. So, but we'll get into that later. One of the coolest things about this whole anime that I enjoyed personally was that they seem to have current event references sprinkled throughout the entire thing. For instance, one of the movies they watch, they don't come out and say it, but Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
I don't remember him holding a car over Danny DeVito, but you know, I'm sure he could at one point in time.
I'm sure he could, depending on the size of the car. Depending on the size of the car. I mean, like, you just can't, you know, I mean, like, for the duration of that entire shot, too, he was holding it over Danny DeVito the whole time. Has a long time to hold a car over someone's head.
Oh, yeah.
But really, the whole series, for at least season 1, revolves around Leonardo Watch and his eyes and how he's trying to get used to them and how he's trying to go about trying to figure out how he can properly use these eyes and how to figure out what's the best course of action for him in life.
Yeah. So the biggest problem in the entire world is the fact that New York seems to, I don't know how you want to put it, because it's not like a multiverse situation, but another world, a parallel world, is converging into and onto our plane. And there are humanoid things that are not humans, and some very not humanoid things.
Right.
But it's basically a secondary world where beings are similar yet extremely different, are coming through essentially and coexisting in an area where New York once was. And it was actually explained away, saying that there were convergent locations all over the world, all over time. The Bermuda Triangle, when a plane would go missing, that it didn't go missing, it just went into this other world. The artifacts that we can't really identify, for instance, Aztecs had airplane-like looking stones in real life. Like, they have structures. Either some people see astronauts, but they have very plane-like looking figurines because they're like, that's a rudder, that's not a tail of a bird. Yeah. Unless birds evolved differently. But in this show, they're saying, oh yeah, that came from our world. So I really like the fact that they were going from like pure science fiction fantasy to like sprinkling stuff in to make it relatable to you if you have any conspiracy theories whatsoever.
Oh yeah, no, this was definitely something that you could see and go, yeah, I totally understand why they made that reference. I can see why they plucked that out and decided to go with that. And especially at the end of season 2, it was like you were really kind of given a overall ideal or an understanding of these eyes that Leonardo Watch has, and they're called the all-seeing eyes of gods.
Yeah. And from what I understood, I think it was unnecessary to go through the entirety of season 2. You really only need the last 2 episodes. And in the last two episodes, you find that the eyes are actually given to people over the years. Whenever there might be a major event or something happening, not the centermost figure, but someone who's heavily involved is given the opportunity to use these eyes that see the ultimate truth. Unfortunately, someone close to them has to lose their sight in order for this to happen.
Yeah.
And like they use examples of the man walking on the moon. They use examples of Roman gladiators. They have these eyes. They excel because of these eyes. And these eyes not only see everything that is there, but they see the true version of whatever's there.
Exactly.
And it's kind of interesting.
It is, but these eyes also allow them to have everyone else perceive what that individual wants them to perceive.
Yeah, that was actually what showed up that I thought was kind of interesting too. At the very last two episodes, you see what I consider to be the full power of the eyes. Now, the villain at the very end, the end of the season, only had one of these eyes, and it was 150 years old. He ripped it out of the last user, and I don't know for what in exchange, but it could have been no exchange for all I know.
Yeah, who probably just took it.
Yeah, but it leads me to believe that the eyes are not organic. They're mechanical, because if you overuse them, they'll fracture. They're self-healing, which is kind of cool, but they'll also overheat and potentially cook your brain if you use them too vigorously.
Right. Well, although I'd have to say it's pretty interesting how the show in between season 1 and season 2 kind of conflicts with itself. Because if you at the end of season 1, right, Leonardo watches left eye cracks, okay, from the usage. But in the end of season 2 with that villain, his eye cracks and he goes, this can't be repaired.
I thought he said, this can't be undone.
He was talking about the eye being broken. He said, you broke my eye. You can't, this can't be repaired. This can't be fixed.
See, he was headbutting him though. Yeah, actually, I see where you're coming from.
I mean, like, if it's cracked, it's cracked. Regardless. I mean, like, the damage was done the same regardless.
I would say we'd have to rewatch that with that focal point in mind, but I really don't want to rewatch it right now.
Neither do I. It was a little rough. It was a little rough for season 2.
I spent 2 solid days looking at this crap. It's a good series. I enjoyed it, but I don't want to binge watch it. It's something I would like to do at my leisure.
Right. This was it was actually very good. It was something I could totally binge. The music for me though, I actually enjoyed at least the ending. The outro. I liked it.
Okay.
It was very very lighthearted, very jazzy, at least for season 1. I liked it.
Yeah. I did notice that the intro and the outro did change more often than I'd like in season 1 and season 2. Season 1, I would say, it had 2 different intros as well as 2 different outros. Season 2, I think, had the same. Yeah, because the last 2 episodes on season 1 had a different intro. This kind of, like, we were actually talking in the chat, and you mentioned that it reminds you of Doraria.
Dorarara. And
I'm not gonna try that.
Yeah, for me, it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, of the feel, the look, but also at the same time, when while I'm thinking about it, it reminds me also a little bit of Darker Than Black. It has a little bit of that feel mixed in with it, and then also while I'm thinking about it, it kind of reminds me just a tad of Wolf's Rain.
I haven't actually seen any of those. I've specifically stayed away from Doraria or Yeah, because my younger siblings are like, this is amazing, and our likes on shows are extremely different. So that kind of turned me off that. Darker Than Black, I don't think I've even heard of, and the last one you mentioned, I'm not aware of.
Okay, well, I think Wolf's Rain's a pretty good and unique show. I'm not going to
might
talk about
review
it
it.
because it's pretty in depth and it's psychological a little bit.
We might watch it on your next choice.
Maybe.
To me, it reminded me a lot, at least the anime style of Cowboy Bebop. I felt that a lot of what was the movements, the character design, they just felt very Cowboy Bebop-esque. And I was a huge fan of Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Explosions. I liked the way things were handled in this whole thing. The camera work, or the camera work, the animation was pristine. I loved it in this one. I loved how in-depth they went when they were showing the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that... So, season 1, I kind of want to focus on that right now for a minute, because the story behind it is quite impressive for a 12-episode anime. Essentially, you've got vampires, or the BBs, or
Bloodborne.
Bloodborne, yeah. Vampires, essentially. And you've got the King of Despair, the King of Boredom, or whatever they was.
There were 13 different kings, but you only really learn of like 3: King of Despair, King of Depravity, and then there was another king, but they glossed over the name or something like that.
Yeah, he was in season 2. Well, actually, was that Chica King?
Yeah. That's why I said they glossed over the name, and that was about it.
Oh, okay. Well, King of Despair was this boy who, his name is Black. Go figure, right? Couldn't get whiter, by the way. Super blonde, super like Aryan. His name was Black.
He was called Black because his sister and him were polar opposites. So she chose to take on her name of White. Even though that's not their real name, they're twins. They had their real names. Like Black's real name was William.
Yeah.
But she preferred to call him Black, and he preferred to call her White simply because of their polar opposite.
Their dad actually gave him that nickname because he likes alcohol.
True.
And they took to it.
Yes, that is actually true. He said it jokingly too. And he's like, no, it works. It totally works for us because of how we are.
Now, what I found kind of interesting is the premise that they're going with is in our world, there were casters or spell weavers, just like there were in the other world. And they're strong in either one. There's also, there's levels, of course, but they were considerably stronger than expected in our world. And Black and White's parents were considered to be relatively strong casters, and because their child was considered to be a thoroughbred, the fact that White has no psychic ability was a huge letdown. That said, Black was born with more than enough to go around. Of course, you can't share it, but he was born with, I guess, double of what a normal person would.
Yeah.
And when the catastrophe happened, when New York essentially sank into this mist thing, casters came around and they stopped it. They put a barrier up to kind of halt everything where it's at. And in that, when they did that, unfortunately, Black and White's parents passed away. And I believe White actually, this is a huge spoiler, White actually passed away as well. And before the parents died, they actually turned White into a component of the barrier.
Yeah, she was one of the key pillars for it.
Yeah. So she can't die unless like the barrier goes down. Whereas unfortunately, Black, while unable to do anything, was confronted by a king, and he made a deal with the King of Depravity that you can do whatever you want to me, but don't touch my sister.
King of Despair, not Depravity.
Despair.
King of Despair.
Depravity was the Fent, F-E-N-T.
Yeah.
He's weird. But essentially, this blood-born king now entered the body of Black and decided to coexist in this world thing.
Well, we don't know what he was. All we know is that he's been around forever.
Well, he was an elder. Well, like, we know that much because he was an elder vampire, because when the all-seeing eye of God saw him, they saw the blood red aura And that's how he came to know the 13 elders were and what the Bloodborne were.
True.
So it was when you find out what's going on, you're like, they don't tell you there's a duality in personality. They didn't tell you that there's two personalities residing in the one body. And it's throwing you as the viewer in a loop because you're like, this is the bad guy. I know. We saw him before. Like, what's going on? Why don't the all-seeing eyes see the bad guy here when they're introduced a little bit later? Come to find out that the aura changes, the personality changes. It's basically a really extreme version of schizophrenia.
Right, but at the same time, I mean, like, you'd be able to tell too. I mean, you would think because his eyes become red.
Yeah.
You would think.
There's like a physical shift. And his eye actually does something very similar to the all-seeing eye, doesn't it? Or is that only when he takes it over?
That's only when he takes it over.
Okay.
It's only when he takes it over. I mean, like, which is unique, I mean, because he wanted the all-seeing eye. Like, he wanted to actually take it. And what's interesting is no one else wants to pull it out of his socket, right, and take it other than the bad guy at the very end.
Yeah, that was odd.
I mean, like, why not just pluck it right out of his head? I mean,
maybe
he's
some
weak
people
enough.
just weren't. Seriously though, so Leonardo's only power is the ability to use his eyes. Now, with that, it's kind of cool. He can make you go crazy by overworking his own eye and making you see whatever he sees, but he can make you disoriented by doing this. He can make you confused. Like, one of the very first attacks he did that I saw was just nuts. So he has a circle on top of a circle show up, right? And then to go make him go crazy, he's got two circles on top of that one. That makes me think like it's just a more complicated spell, but like the result was perfect for him.
Right. But he's also unwilling to really use that to kind of save himself for his own benefit.
He feels that because his sister decided to go blind so that he could get these eyes, that it's unfair for him to use it for personal gain.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating only because he gets his butt kicked so often. And you realize that he is almost the exact definition of a non-combative. He carries a wallet on him that he expects to be taken, and he hides money in like 15 different places because he expects it to be taken. It's not I'm going to get my money back if somebody takes it. No, he's like, you can have it. I just need this much to survive. And there was, I think, 2 times where he was like adamant about getting his wallet back. And it wasn't because he needed the money. It was because he had his sister's allowance in the wallet.
Yeah, that he hadn't yet sent out for whatever reason.
I think he might have been on his way to the post office or something.
Yeah.
Maybe. Although, just like their ATMs, it was bank of whatever it was.
Bank of Helsum lot or something like that. Yeah. Instead of
that's Bank of America. Come on now.
It was a good show. It was entertaining for what it was for season 1. It definitely had a very decent story you could follow through. It was something that was entertaining, to say the least. And then you get to season 2, and what season 2 basically was a backstory for all the characters. Like, almost every episode was a backstory for a certain character all the way through.
See, yes, I do agree with that, but you make it kind of sound like it was a backstory for the main characters.
No, for all the characters in Libra, which is this organization that he is a part of, that apparently in season 1 they could have given him substantial money and living wages or had him whatever else, and
but they chose not to.
But he chose not to. He didn't want all that money. He said he just wanted a living wage, and that was it. And so that's why he's going out and working a second job. Although in season 2, what ends up happening is you find out that there's not that much money to go around, and not everyone actually has things like that. So
yeah, it was weird. It was weird. we kind of glossed over some of the other powers, actually. Like, I thought the other powers were kind of cool.
They were pretty cool.
You've got Reinhardt, who is an unofficial leader of the whole organization.
Klaus.
I say unofficial because Klaus. Wait, which one was Reinhardt then?
Klaus Reinhardt von
Okay.
Reinhardt.
I was going to say.
Klaus von Reinhardt. And then you have Zap. And then you got Chain. With
Chain was interesting.
Chain was very interesting. Steven, Zed, just for the main ones that were really there all the way throughout.
Yeah. Well, so Klaus has this, he's more martial artists. Now, they all have blood techniques. They use their blood for specific attributes. Klaus, he has a brain blockade or whatever you call it, but he activates his blood and he activates the brain grid blockade or brain grid something. And then he's got different forms, 999. Yeah.
All the way up to that. I mean, like supposedly that we know of, but his is also supposedly the more complex out of all of them to use.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which makes sense. I mean, like he's the baddest of them all. He's the worst. Yeah. Not bad as in he's the worst, baddest as in he is truly awesome and killer.
He's the most badass, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the most versatile. He's the only one I saw who was able to actually seal vampires.
Mm-hmm. He is the only one that actually can seal vampires. But at a caveat, you have to know the name.
Yes, and that's where Leonardo came in. With the true eye, he can read what the name is.
Yeah, he can see their true name. As long as he sees their head, I guess, he knows their true name. Not their lower half, because in one of the episodes, they're fighting the lower half, can't see the name, but as soon as he sees that top half, he sees that name.
That was so weird. And then they ask him to... So the vampires or the Bloodborne are so durable, let's call it, that one of my most favorite characters in the entire anime and the entire show, Abraham, what do they call him? Lucky Abraham or something like that?
Oh, Lucky. Just, yeah.
And
dude is awesome.
So this guy, yeah. So to be lucky is one thing. This guy, the reason they call him Lucky Abraham isn't because he's like, oh, I want a scratch ticket. No, it's because he was cursed by the vampires. Like straight up, you got to die. Your whole family got to die. Everything. But his luck is so freaking awesome that anything that is sent to kill him is somehow missed at the last second. Unfortunately, the luck is not extended to everything else, to everyone else around him. He's like, wow, that meteorite came in and just knocked that bus that was going to crash into me out the way. Well, everyone around him keeps like the shrapnel from the bus just obliterates everyone. And he's like, wow, it's really dangerous around here. Y'all probably shouldn't be here. And everyone's like, only when you're around. Like, that's the only time we have issues.
Yeah, and like one of the key indicators for him actually arriving, for everyone else except for Klaus. Klaus is totally oblivious to this, is when Lucky is walking along the runway after having just got off a plane behind him immediately crashes and burns. And it's
into the plane he got out of.
Yeah. It's like, oh. Everyone instantly knew. It was like, oh, okay, Lucky's here. Yep. Yep.
Oh, geez, yeah, that was awesome. Anyway, so going back to it, so Fishman, Zed, yeah, has a blood technique for wind,
which is kind of similar to Zap's blood technique for fire, but they also spawn blades, or they use it for a blade. So Zap's, he uses a sword, whereas of Zed, he uses a trident.
He calls it the 5-edged blade, for some reason. Now, the reason that those two are so similar is their master actually holds two different blood types inside of him, fire and wind. So he's able to use the techniques that he passes on to them by himself. He's considered to be like the most unofficial, most biggest badass of all. And when you meet him, you're like, okay, I could see that. because he's like, if I lose a limb, that's all right. I can use my blood technique to make up for it. If I lose a leg, all right, fine, whatever. My blood can make up for it. And he's literally balancing on a stick
with one arm.
And he's like, that's okay. My blood can make up for everything else.
Yeah.
And apparently he's always in a training situation.
Yep.
Always. And you're like, wow.
Also don't know how old he actually is either.
Oh, he's crazy old. Crazy old. Like, there's no way. There's no way.
There is no way. Steven, his is form for ice. And his primary fighting style is all with kicks.
Yeah. What I found kind of curious is everyone had a different way to draw blood out. Mm-hmm. Steven has this little needle that pops up in the middle of his shoe, and that's how he gets. God, it's got to be painful to walk on. Klaus has this like brass knuckle thing that that'll inject itself into his fingers or palm. Zap, has a lighter that injects itself into his hand. And by the way, they also can do really awesome things. It's not just for fighting, it's for tracking as well. Like if he touches you with some blood, he can make a thread thin thing track you for miles.
As long as he has enough blood for it.
Yeah, as long as he has blood. So if you were to inject him with some IVs of blood or some bags of blood, he'll use those bags to maintain a connection. And what's really awesome is when he pulls the flint on his lighter, he sparks the blood. His blood, for some reason, is flammable. Not quite sure how.
Why not?
But what's really awesome is it'll actually trace and follow, and then eventually make it to the trail end of whatever he touched. That's how they're able to find Leonardo in the first episode, second episode, third episode.
Third episode, I think. And then you also have Chain. Her powers are basically she can minimize her existence.
Kind of. She's a werewolf, and the way that werewolves work. Yeah, she's a werewolf.
No, they call it the Werewolf Brigade, but she isn't a werewolf. She's a invisible werewolf, working for the Werewolf Bureau. I mean, like, does that technically make her a werewolf?
I would say so, only because the Invisible Brigade were all considered to be werewolves, and they all could do the same thing. She was just really good at it. And essentially what that is you just disperse your essence to a microscopic level. You have to reconstitute yourself. But like, for instance, in season 2, when they were doing her backstory, she has to go into this thing and you see them like being cut. Not really, but like their essence is being divided by lasers, light lasers. And they just keep going. They just let it pass right through them without disrupting it. And they just keep going. It's really awesome. So that was a unique way to put it.
I don't know, though. I honestly, for her, I mean, like, yeah, they call it the Werewolf Brigade, but I mean, like, what makes them really a werewolf? Or werewolves?
I don't know.
I mean, like, it could be just the name, and that's it.
It very well could be, but she was referred to dog a few times by Zap.
Yeah, but she also refers to Zap as quite a few different things all the time, too.
True. And she, for some reason, loves to land on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's her landing platform. She doesn't walk anywhere. She jumps like Superman. But when she lands, she lands real hard on his face. And this man has some pretty impressive balancing skills because he very rarely falls over.
That is true. Which you basically learn about the powers and a little bit about them and more in depth in season 2.
Yeah. Well, you'll know what the powers are, but you learn more about them. I felt season 2 was unnecessary. I mean, it was nice that they brought Leonardo's sister into it. It was nice they kind of closed that portion of it because the entire time you're like, he's here for his sister, yet he doesn't like writing. He doesn't like calling. Whatever.
Well, here's the other thing, right? Here's what I have a problem with. His sister is blind. Episode 1 introduces her holding a letter that he wrote her.
Yep.
Okay.
I can solve that one.
Okay. Please do.
Okay. So holding a letter at the lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she said multiple times that she can't get there alone. Somebody's got to bring her to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So my theory is whoever brought her to the lake read her the letter. And she, after reading the letter, was just holding on to the letter.
Okay.
My problem is that even though she's supposed to be blind, she'll always face whoever she's trying to talk to. And she'll like rush blindly into Leonardo's arms.
Well, I mean, like, it only happens like once. I mean, like, she's probably she's rolling straight forward, okay, because she's in a wheelchair. So you would hope that he is running straight for her because he can see. I mean, granted, it seems like his eyes are always closed, though.
Well, see, his eyes are always closed because whenever he opens them, he actually activates the power. They actually discussed this kind of because they kept calling him Squinty for some reason.
Before that, his eyes were always closed.
Yeah, because he doesn't need to. He can see through his eyelids.
No, and even before that, when he's a kid or when he's with his sister before he even got him, his eyes were always closed.
He had weak vision. Who knows? I got nothing.
He's special. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He is very special.
Yeah.
Very, very
The thing that annoyed me to no end is the fact his sister is blind. And if you feel really bad about your sister being blind and you have the power to have other people see what you see, come on.
Well, there is a limit. There is a limit.
They have to have eyes. And she had eyes.
No, I'm saying there is a limit. He can't do it 100% of the time. And then he would also be seeing what she sees, so he'd be walking around blind most of the time himself anyways.
Yeah. Well, like, he can share vision, right? I'd be sharing the hell out of that. I'd be like, hey, sis,
that'd be a little awkward.
Sis, the man that you're about to marry is like 50. You sure about this?
I mean, like, you never know. Hey, man, love is love.
Yeah, she was at best 18.
You know what?
Best.
Hey, you want to help your sister out in any way that you want, you go ahead, you knock that, you do it, man. Hey, sis, let me help you out for your wedding night. I got you.
Oh, no, I'm all set.
Are you sure?
No,
Are you sure you're not going to do that?
Yeah,
I mean,
real
like,
hard pass.
All right.
Hard pass.
All right. Never know. I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there, man. I know how you are. You want to help out your sister.
I am a helpful person, not that helpful. Some things you got to learn how to do on your own, not it.
Are you sure? I'm going to tell your sister that. I'm going to tell your sister that.
Oh, man.
All right. I mean, basically, that there's not much more we could really say about the series. Season 2 was kind of there. Season 1 was better. Season 2, I mean, like, you could have just turned it into a nice OVA for the last 2 episodes and left it at that.
Though. That would have been perfect. That would have been plenty.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things at the very end of season 1 that I felt would have been a nice, just straight up done was when Black is using his psychic powers, is using everything to fight Klaus, and Klaus is just stalling. Klaus is plenty strong enough to kill him, but he doesn't want to do that. And then once Leonardo gets there, he's able to show the truth to Black, restore his sister, and restore everything. And that in itself kind of, it gave Leonardo value for the story, but I don't think it was 100% necessary.
Yeah. Leonardo was kind of the main character that was just there.
Yeah, he was not an appealing protagonist.
Yeah. I don't know. I got nothing else to really say about it. I mean,
I'm kind of with you on that.
All right. On a scale of up to 10, sir, how would you rate this?
Can I split the seasons up? Because that'd be better for me. It'd be easier to do because I would give season 1 a solid 8. Season 2, probably a 4.
I don't see why not. Let's split it. Season 1, 8. Season 2, 4.
Unnecessary to watch.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm going to give season 1 a 7. And I'm going to give season 2 a 2.
Really? Less on both. Why?
Season 1 a 7, simply because I expected more out of it. It could have been so much better than what it was. I enjoyed the music. It was great. It was a good show all the way through. I enjoyed it. It definitely played on some nostalgia for me in terms of making me remember some other shows that I had already long seen.
Okay, so it referenced back in your head. That would make sense. Why it'd be nice.
Season 2, I give it a 2 simply because while it was okay, there was really no story to follow all the way throughout until the last 2 episodes. And then the last 2 episodes really could have been summarized in about maybe a 40-minute, 30-minute OVA.
Yeah, I can see that. They played up on tension a little too much in the last 2 for my liking.
Yeah. So those are my scores.
I agree.
Next week is your choice.
Next week is my choice. So we went kind of dark here, a little bit for realism. Let's change it up a bit. Don't hate me next week, but my choice is Campione.
Campione. Okay.
With an exclamation point.
All right.
Viewer discretion is advised. This is it's not a PG-13, but it's definitely something you definitely want to be more adult to watch this one, in my opinion.
Okay. No, fair enough. It looks like it's 13 episodes long. Came out in 2012 and has genres of comedy, ecchi, fantasy, harem, magic, and romance. Ooh.
Yes.
All right. Definitely a change from my choice, but kind of falls along the lines of what you've been choosing lately. Comedy, ecchi, heavy on the ecchi.
Extremely heavy. Well, I mean, you keep throwing some heavy material out there. I need something light. I need a palate cleanser.
You need some palate cleansers. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what comes out next week for my choice after this.
Darker than black.
Dark. Hey, you know what? That's actually a pretty good one. That might not be that bad. We'll see. We'll see what comes up. We'll see what happens. I'm not gonna sit on anything right now. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed this week's choice, last week's choice, any other choices, if you have some feedback of your own, feel free to reach out to us on any of the platforms. We have a Discord. You can reach out to us, email, Facebook, Twitter, all that information is listed down below. And if you want, you can even listen to us on YouTube and leave a comment there if you want. Be sure to check out all the contact information in our show notes or in the description. Until next time, I'm Jack.
And I'm Rick, and we'll see you later.